Hey guys, it's Abby from Autumn of Pelennor, and today I'm going to be telling you all about the best books I read in 2019. So I don't have any of the books here. There's a bit of a mixed reason for this, but essentially they're all over the place. Some of them I don't own physically, some of them are in the garage and there's stuff in the garage, and you're just going to get pictures of them today. So editing Abby will be very sad, but you still get to see what the covers look like and know which books I'm talking about, so it doesn't really matter. These books were all 5-star reads. There's 11 of them. One is my primary favourite from the entire year, and the other 10 I couldn't rank. I just couldn't rank them. So I'm just going to go in order from how I read them, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So then I'm avoiding ranking them in any sort of awkward way. So let's get into my favourite of the year. Before the coffee gets cold, I'm going to pop it here. I've written down all the books so that I can make sure I mention them all. Cannot remember the author's name because I am atrocious at Japanese and a bad human being. But it is on the cover. It was translated by someone called George something. Check out Goodreads for the full information. It was amazing. Absolutely amazing. I mean, every single book on this list was a 5-star read, but this was insane. I was almost crying sitting downstairs reading it with my dad, and it's just so touching and so thoughtful and thought-provoking and in depth whilst being a short book with 4 different interlocking stories. Before the Coffee Gets Cold is a book about a coffee shop. There's a rumour going around that you can travel in time. Forwards, backwards, you can just travel in time. And this is explored by various different characters. Now you can probably guess there is some sort of time travelling element, but it's not necessarily how you would expect. I love the kind of unique take on time travel and the rules and restrictions that were in place, and how those were utilised within the story, and it's just absolutely beautiful. It's something that I 100% will be rereading. I don't own a physical copy because my little broke ass can't afford it, but I need one. I just need one. I need to make once I get a full-time job. Once I get a full-time job, I am going to buy Before the Coffee Gets Cold because I need it. Apparently I have no voice. So that was my favourite book of the year. If you can't tell, I adored it. If you thought about picking it up and didn't, oh my god, please do. Please do. Please. 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 So then the rest of the books were all 5-star reads as well. As I said, I'm not going to rank them. I'm going through them in the order that I read them, and that is that. If I remember the authors, I'll say. I'm a bad human being. So, the first book I read of the year in 2019 was The Mime Order by Samantha Shannon. This is the second book in the Bone season. The trilogy. It's a 7-book series. There's just 3 out so far, which is why I said trilogy. This series follows a kind of fantasy, dystopian-y London, and people have got powers, and people aren't allowed to have powers. And it follows that kind of dynamic. I'm struggling to talk about it. We follow the main character, Paige. Obviously this is the second book in the series, so I don't want to be saying too much about it, but the progression on from the first book runs really well. I loved it. There was loads of shocked twists and turns, and I was sat on the train making a conscious effort to not yell at the book, because I was sat on a train in public in front of loads of people, moving down to Portsmouth again, trying not to yell. Damn it, Samantha. Damn it. It was so good. Next up is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I finally read it. Finally. Of course, as you can tell, I loved it. I knew I would. I knew I'd love it before I even thought of reading it. If you don't know, this is a dystopian book following a woman called Offred, or of Fred. She's called that because she belongs to Fred. And it's a world where people struggle to conceive, and so people, women who can conceive, are sent to rich men's households and have sex with them and bear their children, and then the wives raise the children, but like they just are like, oh, bye child. And it's like a commentary on women's place in the world, and it was written in the 80s and it was still relevant today, and then things are getting worse and it's still relevant. So definitely a good read. I have the Testaments up here, which I want to get to at some point, and I need to watch the TV show as well. Then I read Orphan Monster Spy by Matt Killeen. This is a World War II YA book following a young Jewish girl who can pass as Aryan and ends up being a spy in a all-girls Nazi school. This was insane. Absolutely insane. There were so many plot twists, so many turns. I was on the edge of my seat and I adored it. Matt Killeen is one of my new favourite authors, and I've read one thing. I won't ever put him on a list of new favourite authors until I've read more than one thing from him, but there's a second book in the series coming out. I'm excited for that. Book of Lies by Terry Terry. I've read another Terry Terry book and I love it. I think she is one of my favourite authors. That was the 4th book of hers that I've read. I've adored every single one of them. Her writing style just really sits really well with me. And even though she does write YA, I'm gonna keep reading her because, oh, I need them. So I'm gonna pick up every book of hers that I find and read them because, oh, it's so good. So this follows a young girl who, obviously it's YA, who has a twin, and she is separated from that twin, and she lives kind of a crappy life and the twin leads a good life, and it's about why they were separated. It's got a magical element. It is a fantasy book and it's kind of about that whole mess, essentially. It was really good. The Devouring Grey by Christine Lynn Herman. This is my first ever book where I have emailed the publisher, asked for a review copy, and then also this is the first ever time I've been sent a review copy from a big publisher, which was insane. And I loved it. I really, really loved this book. It is kind of, it's got like a speculative twist to it, contemporary with a speculative twist, but it is a big twist. Like it's a heavy part of the book. And it's this young girl moves with her mum out to a more rural section of the state of New York, and it's where her mum used to live when she was growing up, and there's loads of weird things going on and loads of weird kind of myths and legends about the place, and she discovers the truth of them. Then I read Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman. This is the 2nd book in the Ark of the Scythe trilogy. I still haven't read the Toll. I don't own the Toll. I require the Toll so badly. I don't even own Scythe, I just own Thunderhead. So I need to buy both of them. Scythe is a world, well, Scythe is set in a world where death doesn't really happen anymore, and if it does, you can be brought back to life very easily. Aging can be reversed, and so they have scythes to cull the population where needed because people can still give birth. And 2 characters are apprenticed to become a new scythe, and one of them will be, and one of them will die. That is the 1st book. Not going to say anything about Thunderhead because it's the 2nd book. Loved it. Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I finally read it. I finally read Illuminae. I loved it. This is a sci-fi book set where it's set in space and there's a small planet that has been attacked for its resources, and all the people have had to run away and escape on 2 separate ships. We follow a girl and a boy. They were dating before the incident but had already broke up, and they're now trying to find each other and make sure that each other are safe on these 2 separate ships, and a lot of stuff goes down. It's a multimedia book. It's really cool. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's really good. Definitely. Oh, so good. Stardust by Neil Gaiman. I actually originally DNF'd this book when I first picked it up. I DNF'd it. I read about 20-30 pages, which isn't a lot, but I was just like, normally I'll try and push through, and I was like, I don't care. I do not care for this. It's boring. I don't want to read it. I feel actively put off. So I was going to DNF it. And then I mentioned it and lots of people online went, what? Do not DNF it. Read it. And I was like, okay, it's like 200 pages. Everyone's saying, oh, you need to read it. At least then, I can have a fully formed view. And then I loved it. Originally, I gave it like 4.5. I bumped it up to 5. I was worried that I was in like that post-reading glow. But no. 5 stars. This is a book set in the middle of nowhere in Britain, and there is a fantasy world on the other side of a wall, and a young boy makes his way there and has adventures. Keep saying young boy, young girl. They're not that much younger than me, I'm only 23. This book is awesome. I had already watched the movie because at the time of watching I didn't know there was a book. Yes, roast me, it's fine. So yeah, I had already seen the movie and it didn't ruin it. I obviously kind of knew what was coming. There was one part of the movie that wasn't in the book, which I both was sad about and glad about because it's problematic. But when I watched it as a child I enjoyed it, but I now recognise the problematic elements, and I'm not going to say it because it'll spoil the movie. But it wasn't in the book. So, but everything else was kind of following along to the movie plot. I think the movie did quite a good job apart from that one awkward scene. And I really loved it. Really loved it. I can see why everyone made me read it now. Can't believe I almost DNF'd one of my favourite books of the year. The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. This is a historical fiction. It follows... oh, I can't remember her name, that's really bad. I can't remember the names of the characters because I read this all in one day, so they didn't sit with me for a while. But it follows a slave woman who tries to use the Underground Railroad to escape. Now, in the real world, the Underground Railroad was just a term used for the method to get slaves to freedom. There wasn't an actual railroad underground. Why can't I say railroad? In this book, however, there is a railroad underground, but it's not fantastical in any way. It is very much kept as if it could have been the events, and everything that happens in this book either very easily could have happened, i.e. the Underground Railroad, or it did happen. And it just didn't necessarily happen to this individual because it's a fictional woman. But Colson Whitehead is an African American himself, I believe. He's black, I think he's African American. And so this was, I could just feel the passion within this of wanting to tell the story. It's not an easy story. It hurts to read it. It will make you sad, it will make you angry. And then the worst part is that it all happened. This isn't I mean it is a work of fiction, but this isn't something out of someone's imagination. This happened to people. And I think it's really important that this is a book that's read, to keep that knowledge, to keep it in the public knowledge that this is something that happened not that long ago and that has still caused issues to this day in the United States and around the world. It's a deep book, it's a heavy book. You will probably give it 5 stars, it's written very well. On to a lighter topic, The Aliens Are Coming by Ben Miller. This is written by a comedian. If you are British, I will pop, well, if you are British. If you're American, you can't see this. Canadian, can't see it. Australian, not British. I'm gonna pop a picture of Ben Miller up here. He is a British comedian, one of the, not the old bunch, but the older bunch than the new lot right now. And if you follow British comedy, you kind of know what I mean. And he looks vaguely like Anton Dubek, and then that other guy that also looks like Anton Dubek. Anyway, so Ben Miller is a known comedian in the British comedy scene, and he also has a cosmology degree, so he is a scientist, and he wrote about how the search for aliens is currently progressing from all different angles, whether this is the geological aspect of the makeup of the planet and how that moves and how that then leads to the possible development of the biology of the planet, to trying to understand dolphin speech so that we can decode alien speech if we ever get a message. It follows all different aspects. It's a non-fiction book. I loved it. It was the perfect thing for me to read straight after I finished my dissertation. It was sciencey, but not in a way that related to volcanoes. It had like mild sprinkling of volcanoes because like tectonic activity was possibly instrumental in life on Earth, but not relevant to what I was doing, so it was fine. It wasn't anything like what I had been studying, and it was absolutely perfect for that time. I loved it, and I really do recommend, if you find sciencey, alien-y stuff interesting, giving it a read, because I really enjoyed it. And that's it. That's every single book that I read in 2019 that was my favourite. I did read some other 5-star books that I haven't mentioned here. I think that I wouldn't rate them 5 stars if I reread them again right now. I think they would go down to 4, 4.5, but at the time they were a 5, they were perfect for the scenario, so they're keeping their 5-star rating unless I reread them. But these were my favourite 11 books of the year. So please comment down below and tell me what your favourite read of 2019 was, and if you've read any of these or want to read any of these. Just let me know your thoughts down below and we can have a good chat. If you like the video, please do like it, and if you want to see some more from me, you can hit the subscribe button. I've got all of my various doobly-doos down in the description below. I've got my Instagram, my Twitter, my Goodreads, all that good stuff is down there, so if you want to see me anywhere else, go have a click through, as well as the links to stuff. I haven't linked anything in this one. I've not linked anything in this one. I've done so many videos where I'm linking like 7 million things. This is not one of them. I'm gonna shut up. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys tomorrow if you want to see my next video. And yeah, thank you and bye!